just going to start with a song.
接下来我唱一首诗歌给大家听。
It's called What a Wonderful World, and I think we've got some lyrics there.
歌名是多么美好的世界。
Yeah. So hopefully you'll follow and make sense. Are you going to sing? I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you. It is indeed a very wonderful world, a very beautiful world.
确实，这个是一个非常美好的世界。
And we know this because we marvel at so much of creation.
因为我们知道这是神所创造的，给我们很惊奇的美好的世界。
Can we maybe just turn this microphone off? This is great.
可能要关掉
Yeah,
另外一个麦
I can hear it's about to feedback. But we also know it's not just a beautiful world, it's fully beautiful, fully beautiful. Yeah.
不仅仅是美好，而且是完全的美好。
But it's also a very broken world.
但同时，不幸的是，也是一个破碎的世界。
And I believe that God wants to pierce our hearts with both the beautiful and the broken.
我深信神是要让这样的信息扎我们的心。这个世界是美好的，同时也是破碎的。
To marvel at the wonderful things, His creation, but also have our hearts broken for what breaks His.
我们惊叹神所创造美好的世界，同时我们的心也是哀伤这个世界的破碎。
And within all of this is where justice sits.
在这当中正义扮演了一个很重要的角色。
So what does it mean for us to talk about justice in a world so clearly full of pain and suffering?
在这样一个破碎的世界里，我们来谈论正义的意义何在呢？
In a world that doesn't look like there is any justice.
这个世界好像看起来是没有正义的。
And how do we connect with what we read in the Bible and understand about God and see happening in the world?
我们是如何把我们所读到的圣经上的经文和这个破碎的世界联系在一起呢？
There is a lot of injustice in the world.
这个世界上存在了很多不公正的事情。
This week, as Baptists around Victoria, we are celebrating, or we're looking at our Justice and Advocacy Week, just to learn some more things about how we can engage.
这个周是我们维省浸信会的关于正义和拥护正义的这样一个周。
I myself spent nearly 6 years in a role that was to do with Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationship here in this country.
我自己在这个里面扮演的角色，我在过去的6年当中在非原住民和原住民不同的人之间做一个桥梁的这样一个工作。
And I learned a lot about injustice, and I learned a lot about myself, but I learned a lot about justice, but I also learned a lot about myself.
我在这个过程当中，我学到了很多这个关于正义，也学到了关于很多我自己的。
And I got it wrong often.
我经常会犯错。
But in learning to understand more, it helps. It becomes a very beneficial two-way street. We learn from each other.
在我更了解我自己的过程当中，我也得到很多的长进。
And it's great to hear there are a lot of things happening through Mitcham Baptist community here in this community, but also with the Chinese congregation as well, reaching out to those around them.
我听到了我们当中的这个浸信会，包括我们的中文部，我们也有很多向外扩展、接触周围社区的这样一些活动。
In Psalm 28, verse 1, we read this scripture.
接下来我们读诗篇28章第1节的经文。耶和华啊，我要求告你，我的磐石啊，不要向我缄默。倘若你向我闭口，我就如将死的人一样。
Anyone who is crying out but feels like they're not being heard quickly descends into a pit in their own thinking.
我们是否有这样的经历？当我们向外呼求，但没有人倾听的时候，感觉自己像掉到一个深坑里的一样的感觉。
Injustice occurs when people don't hear and therefore don't do anything.
不公正发生在当一些人没有被倾听。或者是没有人做出一些反应的时候，就发生了不公正的事情。
But justice occurs when people are being heard, and when those who can do something do something.
公正是当一些人向外呼求的时候，有一些可以被帮助他们的事情被做出来，他们得到帮助，这就是公正。
And so this morning, I just want to look at 3 quick stories from the book of Luke, starting with Luke chapter 18, verse 1.
今天早晨，我们通过路加福音18章的3个故事，展开我们今天的讲道。First story?
Yeah, first story.
第一个故事记载在路加福音18章1到6节的经文里面。我给大家读出这段经文。耶稣设一个比喻，是要人常常祷告，不可灰心。说某城里有一个官，不惧怕神，也不尊重世人。那城里有个寡妇，常到他那里说，我有一个对头，求你给我伸冤。他多日不准。后来心里说，我虽不惧怕神，也不尊重世人，只因这寡妇烦扰我，我就给他伸冤吧，免得他常来缠磨我。主说，你们听这不义之官所说的话，神的选民昼夜呼吁他，他纵然为他们忍了多时，岂不终究给他们伸冤吗？我告诉你们，要快快的给他们伸冤了。然而人子来的时候，遇得见世上有信德吗？
And so my first point this morning is that the arc of justice is long.
今天的第一个要点是公义的轨迹很长。
Martin Luther King, who was an advocate for black rights in America, said this 4 days before he was assassinated.
马丁路德金就是最著名的为了黑人的权利而斗争的这样一位斗士，他在被刺杀之前的前4天说了这样一段话。
He said, "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice."
我们应该能够有信心胜过这一切，因为公义的轨迹，这个宇宙公义的轨迹虽然很长，但最终它会倾向于正义。
At some point, all the evil in the world will have a reckoning with God's justice. God's justice plays a part in the whole story.
就算是这个世界上的邪恶的势力，他们也会被清算，因为被神的公义所清算。
In Matthew chapter 25, we read about how Jesus will judge us according to what we have and haven't done for those who are in need.
我们在这个马太福音的25章那段很出名的经文里面，我们会有这样一段故事。耶稣讲到了，我们最终会被因着我们所给予的才干，但是我们所做出的，根据我们的才干所做出的行为来被神所清算。
And like the story of the widow, Matthew 25 tells us that we have the opportunity to do something here and now that makes a difference.
就像这个我们刚才读过的这个寡妇的这个故事，他清楚地告诉我们，我们有机会做一些事情的时候，做出一些改变的时候，我们就要做出这样的改变。
And we should be those who already have an eye to see and an ear to hear, because this is the nature and the character of God. What He's doing now, He will do forever.
我们应该像那些就像圣经里所说的，有耳的就当听，有眼的就当去看见。我们应该知道、看见和听到这个世界上的需求。
Psalm chapter 10, verses 17 to 18 says this.
诗篇10章17到18节里面是这样讲到的，说耶和华谦卑人的心愿，你早已知道。原文作听见。你必预备他们的心，也必侧耳听他们的祈求，为要给孤儿和受欺压的人伸冤，使强横的人不再威吓他们。
Terror exists in the world because of injustice.
在这个世界上有一些恐怖的事情的发生，是因为是有不公义在。
But God cares about the orphan and the widow all throughout the Old Testament.
但是神在圣经里面所记载的这样一位神，他是孤儿和寡妇的神。
And He expects us to do the same as we read in Psalm 82, verses 3 and 4.
神也期待我们，就像在诗篇这里所记载的一样，让我们也做出同样的行为来。我来给大家读一下：你们当为贫寒的人和孤儿伸冤，当为困苦和穷乏的人施行公义，当保护贫寒和穷乏的人，救他们脱离恶人的手。你们仍不知道，也不明白，在黑暗中走来走去。地的根基都摇动了。
We read in Psalms that justice is one of the foundations of His throne, and therefore, whenever there's injustice, that's why the earth shakes.
就像诗篇里所记载的，这个公义是神宝座的基石之一，所以当这个不公义发生的时候，就连神的这个宝座的基石也可能会被摇动。
And we read that God is upset over injustice. He hates it when political rulers fail to administer justice on behalf of the widow, the orphan, the poor, and the weak.
我们也知道，神是会难过的。当不公义的事情发生的时候，他恨恶世上的政治的领袖，这些领导人，他们没有替这些贫穷的这个受苦的人。来治理这个世界，没有替他们发声的时候，神的心也是会悲伤的。
And so it is our role to be salt and light, to shed light, to be a voice, and also to be salt to bring about change.
所以，作为基督徒，我们的角色应该就是像盐在这个世界上，像光在这个世界上一样。
So justice is a long arc, but we should operate confidently within that arc, knowing that we are in God's will.
就像我们刚才提到的要点，我们知道公义可能是一个很长的轨迹，但是我们会在里面扮演一个角色。
Okay, and so then the second story
第二个故事
follows straight on from the first story.
第二个故事紧接着在路加福音的记载里面，在18章9节开始，我给大家读一下。路加福音18章9节，耶稣向那些仗着自己是义人、藐视别人的，设一个比喻说，有2个人上殿里去祷告。一个是法利赛人，一个是税吏。法利赛人站着自言自语的祷告说：“神啊，我感谢你，我不像别人勒索、不义、奸淫，也不像这个税吏。我1个礼拜禁食2次，凡我所得的都捐上1/10。”那税吏远远的站着，连举目望天也不敢，只捶着胸说：“神啊，开恩可怜我这个罪人。我告诉你们，这人回家去，比那人倒算为义了，因为凡自高的必降为卑，自卑的必升为高。”
So the second point is that the ask of justice on us is self-examination.
所以我的第二个要点就是公义的要求是自省、自我反省。
In the story Jesus told, one person justified themselves and where they were in life, the other person threw themselves on God's mercy.
就像这个故事里所记载的那个税吏，他来判断别人，通过判断别人来判断他自己。但是另外一个sorry， 前面讲的是一个法利赛人，第二个税吏他是把他自己交给神来判断。
God shows mercy to us,
神给我们怜悯，
and therefore we should show mercy to others.
所以我们从神来的怜悯，我们应该怜悯别人。
Issues of injustice arise when we justify where we are in life and automatically assign others to the justice that we perceive that they deserve.
Sorry, which point?
So it's a bit tricky because it's very English, right? So when we justify where we are in life,
我们自己自省我们自己的生活，
we automatically assign others to the justice that we perceive that they deserve.
我们把我们自己的标准加到别人身上来判断别人。
So I might say, I'm here, I've got this because I didn't do this.
就像我们可能会说，我在这里，我没有做那些事情。
And I might say that that person is there because they didn't do the things they should have done.
就像我们会判断那些人，他之所以有那个境界，是因为他那个处境，是因为他没有去做一些事情。
It's very easy for us to make assumptions about another person's life
我
without,
们很容易假设别人的生活，
but they may not have had the same choices that we have.
但是他们可能没有我们所处的环境能够做出他们可以做出的选择。
And they may be part of a system that is prejudiced toward them.
也许是他们所处的整个的外在的大的环境，迫使他们做出那样的决定。
When I spent 6 years in an Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationship role, and this was the very challenging thing for me.
我在过去6年当中，在扮演了这样一个角色，在成为原住民和非原住民中间桥梁的这样一个角色，给我带来很多的挑战。
I realized there was a lot of things that I didn't understand about me and how I got to where I was in life.
让我也理解了很多关于我自己的所处的这样一个处境。
And I might be able to list a whole bunch of bad things that I am not.
Sorry,
I might be able to list a whole bunch of bad things that I'm not, you know.
我很容易拉出一个清单来，有一些这么多坏的事情我没有做。
But there might be a bunch of bad things that I am, I just haven't realized it yet.
但是也有很多事情我可能只是现在刚刚的认识到。
And so we have to self-examine to understand where we are and how we got there.
我们要经常反省自己我们是在怎样的处境当中，我们在哪里。
And that also helps us to understand how the other person that we're trying to understand got to where they are.
也去更好的理解别人是他们在怎样的处境当中。
So I had to learn how to listen more carefully.
我也学习怎样的更好的去倾听，更仔细的去倾听别人，
And not justify my own place in life.
而不是只是来反省自己的来反省自己的处境。
I had some very good relationships with Indigenous people, and I learned the most when I learned how to undo my own thinking to be able to listen more carefully.
我结识了很多很好的原住民的朋友最重要的一点是我学习到怎样放下自己的很多的想法，原本的想法。
Not just offer my own opinion, my helpful thoughts, or my solutions.
而不是提供我是怎样想的，而不是提供我的解决方案，提供我的想法。
And I had a good friend of mine in an Indigenous community in Queensland who I spent a lot of time with.
我有一个很好的朋友在昆士兰的一个原住民的社区里面。
And so often in those conversations I would say, I never thought of it that way before.
很多的谈话是这样开始的，我会跟他讲说，我从来没有用这种方式来思考过。
So two very big things that I learned in my world that happened for me.
有2个很重要的事情发生在我的生命当中。
I had never before thought about white privilege, what it meant to be a white person.
第一点是我以前从来没有想过我有这个白种人的特权。
And I'd never before thought about what it meant to be part of the dominant culture.
我以前从来没有想过我是主流文化的一部分。
And I'm very aware that most people in this room are not part of that dominant culture and are not white and are therefore will have run into this in their own lives.
所以我也很清楚的知道，在我们现在的这个大堂里面，有很多人是不认为自己是主流文化的。
In fact, my wife has Indian heritage as well, so we understand.
就是因为我的太太是有印度血统的，所以我很容易理解这一点。
So 2 quick stories that have highlighted this in my world.
有2个小故事，我想分享给大家。
And there have been many, many stories.
可能有很多很多的故事，只是举2个例子。
I was lining up in Office Works 3 or 4 weeks ago.
4、5个周以前，我在这个 Office Work， 就是卖办公用品的那个店里面排队买东西。
And the person serving me looked to me to say, "Can I serve you?"
那个店员看到我就直接跟我讲说：“我可以来帮你吗？”
And completely misseeing a young Indian lady in front of me.
他直接就忽略到了在我前面排队的一个印度裔的女士啊。
I was amazed, actually.
我当时是很惊讶。
But I did recognize it because I'm used to being able to see it now.
但是我现在能够认识到，我以前可能已经很习惯的一些东西。
And the Indian lady got very upset.
那个很显然，那个印度裔的女士会非常的不高兴啊。
I'm sure many of you have experienced the same thing.
我想我们当中，我们大家可能也都经历过类似的经历啊。
I'm seeing a
有
lot
人在点头啊。
And so, but many people might say, well, she just didn't see her.
有的人会说，也许他只是当时就是没看见那个人。
And I would go, exactly, that's the point.
我会说，对，这个就是这个点就是在这里啊。
Yeah. So on behalf of white people, I apologize that you have received that.
我代表白种人向大家道歉。
Another story, a number of years ago, I was flying out of Ethiopia.
另外一个故事是很多年以前，有一次我从这个埃塞俄比亚坐飞机飞回来。
I was on my own, waiting to board the plane in the airport lounge.
当时我是一个人在机场等候飞机。
And they called me up and they said, "Excuse me, sir, we have overbooked the plane."
当时他们机场的管理人员把我叫过去，跟我讲说：“对不起，我们对飞机这个多订出票去了。”
And so they said, "We're sorry, but we have to put you into business class."
所以我为了表达歉意，我们把你升舱到这个商务舱。
So I said, "Praise the Lord."
我当时说感谢主。
Only since I've learned some more things.
后来我学习了更多的事情，更多的关于这方面的学习。
That I realized that I was probably the only white person on that plane, and
我才
therefore they chose me to
我
upgrade.
才意识到，可能当时我是唯一的一个白种人，所以他们当时就是选的我。
And so it's not just about me and what I learn, but it's actually about how other people feel and respond because they're being treated that way.
当然也不是我学习到什么，而是我在这个当中也了解到其他人是怎么想的。
Yeah. And so it's important for us to learn and to understand, and for in relation to indigenous people in this country.
所以对我们来说，要不光是了解，也是学习到这个原住民在这个国家。
Chinese people can play a really great and helpful role.
中文背景的弟兄姐妹们可以中国人可以扮演一个很重要的角色和原住民的关系。
Because indigenous people understand that you too are
non-white.
Are not white, yeah. That you too understand what it means to not be part of the dominant culture.
因为原住民会认为中国人你们也不是白人。
Yeah, indigenous people love non-white people.
因为原住民他们很喜欢非白种人。
I'm very quick to tell them that I'm from New Zealand.
我会很快的告诉他们，我是实际从新西兰来的。
And it helps.
有的时候是有帮助的。
So it's important that we take the time to listen and to learn and to self-examine who we are, because there are people who are less well off than you people as well. Yeah.
所以我们应该更多的是去倾听，去了解我们是处在什么样的位置上。
Yeah. So moving to the third story.
我们现在进入第3个故事。
And from Luke chapter 18 again, and it's towards the end of Luke chapter 18, and Moses will. Yeah.
在路加福音的18章35到41节的经文里面，我给大家读出来。 耶稣将近耶利哥的时候，有一个瞎子坐在路旁讨饭，听见许多人经过，就问是什么事。他们告诉他是拿撒勒人耶稣经过，他就呼叫说：“大卫的子孙耶稣啊，可怜我吧！”在前头走的人就责备他，不许他作声。他却越发喊叫说：“大卫的子孙，可怜我吧！”耶稣站住，吩咐把他领过来。到了跟前，就问他说：“你要我为你做什么？”他说：“主啊，我要能看见。”耶稣说：“你可以看见，你的信救了你。”瞎子立刻就看见了，就跟随耶稣，一路归荣耀与神。众人看见这事，也赞美神。
My next point is that the aim of justice is disruption.
我的第3个要点是，公义的目的是中断和重建。
There are 3 quick characters in this story.
有3个重点在这个故事里面。
First of all, the blind guy, the blind person.
第一个要点当然是关乎这个盲人的。
And in the blind person, we see many attributes of anybody who's marginalized in society.
那么从这个盲人身上，我们看到了很多关于这个边缘人群的或者是弱势人群的特点。
First Nations people, creation, aged care, asylum seekers, global poverty, family violence and homelessness.
那么今天我们所说的弱势人群，那可能会包括原住民、土著在老年看护所里的那些人这些难民的寻求难民庇护的人，还有这些家庭暴力的受害者们。
The blind guy, first of all, he's used to being shoved to the side because of more important things happening.
这当时代的这个盲人，他们所处的这样一个环境，就是很容易被推到一边去，当一些重要的事情发生的时候。
Here in Australia, Palm Island, my friend who I talked about before, who lives on Palm Island in Townsville, Palm Island basically became a penal colony, like a prison for anybody who did wrong in Queensland.
那我刚才讲到了我认识的那个原住民的好朋友，他住在Palm Island， 叫椰树岛，中文可能翻译成椰树岛。那么那个岛现在它的位置是在昆士兰的汤斯维尔的海边的外海的一个岛屿，那么变成了一个像监狱一样，就是那些被边缘化的人群所住的一个社区。
Yeah, people being shoved aside.
就像那个盲人一样被推到边上去了。
The blind guy was also used to being told to be quiet.
这个盲人也被习惯于别人给他讲闭嘴，不要让他讲话。
The voices of justice are often shut down by other dominant voices.
有的时候正义的声音常常会被这些主流的声音所关闭啊。
But the blind guy heard the sound of hope.
但是这个盲人听到了希望，听到了盼望的声音。
Those who are sidelined are very aware of the injustices around them.
那么通常这些边缘化的人群，他们会非常的容易听到这些声音。
And he picked up on that sound of hope coming.
他很容易的就听到了这个盼望的声音。
He was determined to be heard, and he was prepared to disrupt.
所以他当时决定他要被听见，所以他会大声喊出来。
Which comes to the second character in the story, the crowd.
那么接下来我们进入第二种人物，就是当时的人群。
And it's easy for us to shape our lives in a way that is easy to fall in with the crowd.
有的时候，我们的生命是很容易去跟随这个人群的。
And it says a very interesting thing in this story.
所以这里有一个非常有意思这个故事的一个点。
It said that those who were leading the crowd told the blind guy to be quiet.
当时领导这些人群的人，他们主动站出来让这个盲人闭嘴。
And I find it very scary that we can be in the crowd, in the presence of Jesus, and completely miss what it is he wants to do.
这个是提醒我们，有的时候我们成为耶稣的跟随者的时候，在这个人群当中的时候，我们有的时候会有误解。
We can even be leading the way and miss it.
我们有的时候可能会被别人误导。
Which brings us to the third person in the story, Jesus.
所以这个让我们看到这个故事当中的第三个人物就是主耶稣，
who stops everything.
他当时打断了当时正在发生的事情，
Stops the crowd and points over to the side and says, "That's the guy I want to talk to."
他打断了当时的人群，他把指向了盲人，说这个人是我想讲话的人。
And so for all of us, we need to be prepared for Jesus to disrupt us.
我们应该随时准备耶稣可能会打断我们，给我们新的方向。
Have our own stories interrupted.
我们的自己的故事可能会被打断。
And at times we also need to disrupt.
有的时候我们的时间是可以被打断的。
When we learn more about injustice, we can stop others from saying the wrong things.
有的时候通过这些经过这些不公义的事情的时候 ，sorry, what's up?
We can stop others from saying and doing the wrong things. When we learn more, yeah.
我们可以打断那些做的不对的事情。
I have a story about how I failed.
我有一个我自己失败的故事。
One night we were coming out of a restaurant, just coming onto the footpath looking for some Ubers to catch to get to another place.
有一天我从一个旅馆的这个大厅里出来，到这个车道想找一辆这个出租车去另外一个地方。
And a homeless person walked up to us.
有一个无家可归的人来接近我们。
And asked us a question that we couldn't answer because we didn't know the area.
他来问我们一个问题，但是因为我们不了解那个地区，我们是不能够回答他当时问的那个问题。
And so she just walked off down the road.
所以他当时就走掉了。
And I remember turning 30 seconds later and seeing her talking to someone else.
后来我记得我当时30秒以后，我转过去看见他在跟另外一个人讲话。
Thinking we couldn't answer her question, but we could have done something.
我当时突然意识到，也许我不能回答他当时的那个问题，但是我可以做一点其他的事情。
We could have checked if she had had food.
我们也许可以检查一下，问他一下，他是不是饿了，是不是有食物。
We could maybe even have checked on the internet if we could even answer her question.
也许我们可以当时用手机搜索一下网络，可以找到他想要的答案。
So unless we shut out our own story sometimes, or unless we shut out all the noise around us, we can miss the story moving right within our
有
midst.
的时候我们可能要停下我们要做的事情，然后关闭掉周围这些嘈杂的声音，我们可以这个时候可以才被打断。
And the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10
在路加福音10章里面，我们大家都知道那个好撒玛利亚人的故事，
is all about the person who let themselves be disrupted in their story.
全是关于这些人被打断的这个故事。
So my next point is that the action of justice is about hope.
最后一点是公义的行动关乎希望。
The hope that the beautiful world, the wonderful world I sang about earlier, will rise and become more prominent.
这个盼望和希望是因为这个美丽的世界，我刚才唱的那个美丽的世界是可以再重新被起来的。
It's important that the wrongs of the past are made right.
Sorry.
It's important that things that were done wrong in the past, it's important that they are made right. God looks to the future.
我们以前做的错的事情，也许是对的，因为神是看到未来的神。
To make things right, but we also play a part in that.
我们在这个神的计划当中是有一个角色的。
The future belongs to God.
因为未来是属于神的。
Despair makes everything seem hopeless. Despair.
尽管很多事情看起来是没有盼望的。
But hope helps us make a stand and believe that our actions can change the course of history.
但是盼望让我们知道我们所处的位置是在历史当中扮演一个角色的。
Hope makes us take action.
盼望让我们能够做出行动。
On behalf of the weak, the poor, and the vulnerable.
来代表那些弱势人群来做出一些行动。
Just like the psalmist in Psalm 28, people want to be heard and are looking for a response.
就像在诗篇28章我们刚才读过的， 那些人是盼望被听见的。
The judge in the first story had to respond to the voice.
就像刚才我们讲过的第一个故事The judge of the
The judge in the first story, the widow.
那个法官，那个官，以色列人的官。
The lawmaker in the second story, the Pharisee, was not justified by his own voice.
第二个故事里面那个法利赛人，他不是自己被判断。
How good is Moses? And the crowd in the story of the blind guy were trying to shut down one voice, but all their voices got shut down by Jesus.
当时我们刚才讲到那个人群的故事那些人想让盲人闭嘴，但是他们所有的声音被主耶稣打断了。
Jesus brings hope and inspires action.
主耶稣带来盼望，同时也带来行动。
And so we are filled with hope, and we are motivated by hope.
我们充满了盼望，充满了希望，我们也被盼望所驱动，能够做出行为。
Hope for the long arc of justice to serve the widow and the orphan and the outcast.
这个公义的轨迹，因着盼望而能够成为寡妇的盼望，能够成为弱势人群的盼望。
Hope for me, the sinner, who examines his life to play a role in this.
盼望对我自己也能够带出我自己的生命的改变。
And hope that individuals and even a crowd can be disrupted and change direction to make a difference.
就像刚才故事里面所讲的那个人群，因着盼望做出了改变，他们的重新做出了重建，做出了整个故事的改变。
Thank you so much for listening this morning. There may be parts of this that inspire or challenge you. Maybe just take those away with you this morning.
谢谢大家希望今天的讲道能够给大家带来重新带来动力，带来改变的动力。
And thank you again, Moses. He probably just preached his own message. Thank you.
也感谢